Here are 10 things that everyone should know about autism, but particularly people who are autistic. Now, normally I will lead off with the most important thing, but I decided this time I'm going to save it to the very end. So we've got 10 things, and the number 10, in my opinion, is probably the one that we really need to pay more attention to than anything else, or at least it's the most important. Well, let's start with number 1. And that is the fact that vaccinations, okay, you've heard this before, but vaccinations don't have anything to do with autism. Where does that come from? Where did that rumor come from? It's kind of, they used to call these urban legends. Somebody will start something, it's kind of like a conspiracy theory, and it gets passed around. But the one thing that is absolutely positively missing is evidence. I mean, there's been a ton of research done. And there's not a scintilla, not an inkling of any evidence that vaccinations and autism have any connection whatsoever. It's not that one causes the other, but, what causes vaccinations? Well, typically a desire to not catch a disease or whatever, so you get vaccinated. That has nothing to do with autism. So where does this start? Where did this begin, this rumor, this urban legend? I think it probably started with a notion that children get vaccinated at about the same time that they are evidently autistic. And so some people say, oh, he's autistic or she's autistic. Hey, wait a minute. A few weeks ago or a few months before we realized she was autistic or he was autistic, the kid had a vaccination, so it must have caused autism. Or maybe the autism was discovered before the vaccination, that nobody notices that, because who's going to say autism caused a vaccination? Nobody. So there's no evidence whatsoever. Now, when I got vaccinated, I think I was maybe 5 years old, and it left this little circle on my arm. I don't know if it's still there or not. It may be gone. It's not something I particularly look for. But it was obvious to me, even at that young age, that I was a little bit different from all the other kids. I didn't think, oh, I've got Asperger syndrome. I never heard of it. Couldn't even pronounce it probably at that age. I didn't know what autism was. I don't think hardly anybody knew what autism was. I think it would have been helpful if they did, so they could have given me a little more substantial, effective direction in life, but they didn't. So that's fine that they did not. So vaccinations don't have anything to do with autism. Is that rumor going to go away? No, probably not, because people like to believe silly things. Oh, by the way, did you know the moon landing was a hoax? And did you know that the word Gullible is not in the dictionary? Number 2 is this. Believe it or not, people who are autistic can actually have meaningful romantic relationships. Now, where I learned this stuff, by and large, is from life experience. Here I am in my 70s. I've learned a thing or two. I'm sharing with you some of the things that I've learned, and I can tell you that I've had some wonderful romantic relationships, and the most recent is probably going on now about 50-some years. We've been married, doing the math in my head, 47 years? We were married in 76, and now it's 2024. So can we have romantic relationships? Well, obviously, because many of us do. But there's this kind of a rumor, it's kind of like the vaccination thing, that because people with autism tend to be socially withdrawn, inept, that they struggle to have any kind of relationship, let alone a romantic relationship. Well, that's true. It may be more difficult, it may be more of a struggle, maybe more of a challenge. That's my favorite term, challenge rather than problem. But it happens, and it happens quite frequently. So when you hear somebody say something like that, I understand what they mean, that it's tough and it's challenging. And people with autism probably are more likely to live their life single than neurotypical people, the people who live in the hive mind. That's not the problem. The problem is, or the challenge is, when we start saying that it's virtually impossible for somebody who is autistic to have a romantic relationship. Obviously, that's not true. Number three is, believe it or not, this is another one of these relationship things. People with autism actually can and do develop deep friendships. Difficult for me to do that. Very challenging for me to have any kind of friendship, deep or shallow or whatever. But I can tell you, I have had them in my life. I found it's very difficult for people to find their way into my sphere, my bubble. It's like my whole life I felt like I was surrounded by this invisible barrier that people could not penetrate, and more importantly, I couldn't get out of. It's just there. But some people were able to come right inside, and it's kind of amazing. Like they just walked through a wall. Not very many, maybe a dozen in my entire life. But yeah, they have been there, and I have had some very good, close friendships. I had a very good friend when I was elementary school age, and haven't heard from him for a while, so I'm on Facebook a while back. But, he's my age, and he may be autistic himself. I don't know. But, yeah, we had a very good friendship. I had a friend when I was junior high school age. They call it middle school now. This guy was a couple of years older than me, and we hung out. And the thing that we loved to do is we'd go out and walk and talk for sometimes a couple hours and just goof off. But we had, what do they call that, a bromance? Yeah. And we went to high school together. Because he was older, he graduated about the time I was starting. So he went his way into a career, and I stayed in high school. And we kind of lost track of each other. But those are just a couple examples of good friendships that we've had. So, yeah, it's possible. It happens. It's, again, challenging, but it does happen. And something that is important to notice, not only with romantic relationships and with bromances. What is the female version of a bromance? Sistermance? I don't know. You come up with a term. But people with autism tend to value relationships because it is so challenging, so difficult for us to acquire them. And because of that, people with autism tend to be extraordinarily loyal. Well, I assume that's the reason. Maybe there's some other reason, but they have a track record. People with autism have a track record of loyalty. Now, maybe that's associated with the fact that people with autism tend to be very honest. Maybe there's something neurological going on there that these two things are related. I don't really know. I just know that studies have revealed, studies that I've read, you can probably find them on the internet, reveal that people with autism are really, really loyal. And the problem with that is that, well, the good thing is we make good friends. We make good romantic partners. The bad part is we tend to be gullible. People take advantage of us because we just inherently are loyal to people. And somebody who's a scammer, and by the way, there's a bunch of them out there, they look for people like us because they can take advantage of us. People who are loyal are prime victims for all kinds of scammers. Heads up, be careful. Number 4 is this. People with autism are not dumb. That's not a good term to use. The preferred word is intellectually challenged or intellectual disability. But I think dumb will work. It's not a good term. People don't like that term because it's kind of, it doesn't sound very good. But still, we're not dumb. Some people with autism are. I don't know that people with autism are any dumber than neurotypical people who live in the hive mind. So some of us are dumb. Remember the movie Rain Man? Raymond Babbitt? He wasn't dumb. He was extraordinarily smart, but there were some areas where he was less than proficient, shall we say. But we do have communication problems, and sometimes people will translate a lack of communication with stupidity. That is, or intellectual disability. That is so sad. I know it occurs to me that people sometimes, those of us who live up north, we will hear somebody with a Southern accent, and I love Southern accents. I don't know why, I just like British accents, Australian accents, Southern accents, just love to hear people talk. But there are some people up north that they somehow associate a Southern accent with being hokey, being uneducated, country music. Yeah, I like country music, some of it. But there are some people they just have that northern arrogance about them. I don't know where it comes from, but they just have it. It's Southern accent. The guy must be a hillbilly. He must be dumb. Fact of the matter is that there are some extraordinarily intelligent people with Southern accents. Now, the reason I bring that up is it's kind of a parallel. You know, if you think somebody that has an accent, from Alabama, Mississippi, wherever, well, people from Michigan think I have a Southern accent, believe it or not. But some people think I'm from Texas. I don't know where that comes from. But we do the same thing, or people do the same thing to people with autism. It's not our accent, but it's the fact that a lot of times we just don't socialize, we don't talk, and they think your inability to communicate effectively like they do in the hive mind, all those little bees in the beehive, are going their own direction harmoniously. Just the most amazing thing I've ever seen if you've watched bees in a beehive. How do they know what they're doing? Well, the hive mind is the same thing. It's really amazing to watch neurotypical people as they go about their way. Don't condemn them for doing this. They go about their own way in harmony. Just amazing. But we don't do that. So they think, well, this dummy doesn't know how to behave. He doesn't know how to go his own way in harmony. So, he must be dumb. That's the conclusion they draw, and you know what? They're wrong. Conversely, number 5 is not all people with autism are savants. That is to say, they have this one little special skill. Usually it's something like drawing or playing chess that they're just super, super, super good at. But it's the only thing they're super, super, super good at. And some people associate that with autism because these people tend to be autistic or something like autism. Or they present as being autistic even though they're not. But the fact of the matter is about 10%, from what I've heard, about 10% of people with autism actually do have savantism. They actually are savants. So that means 90% of us are not. I'm trying to think what thing that I am really, 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 really good at. And the thing that I am the area where I excel is I excel in the area that I don't excel in anything. That's my savantism. So I'm autistic, but I'm not savant. And if you're autistic, there's like a 90% chance you're not either. Number 6, and this flies against what a lot of people have been told. That is that people with autism are actually more likely, according to some studies, more likely to feel emotional empathy. We feel sorry for other people. We may not express it, but we feel it, and that's what I think is often more important. How do I know? Well, been there, done that, still there, still doing it. My heart goes out to people, particularly people who are lonely. I've said this in other presentations, other videos. But when I see somebody sitting alone or being rejected or being dejected, feeling dejected, somebody who just isn't belonging, and I know how they feel because I've felt that way most of my life, particularly when I'm around other people. So there I was, 5, 6 years old, trotting off to school, where I mentioned in another video, it was kind of like being thrown in a swimming pool or in a lake and you can't swim. And nobody helps you. And that's the way it is all day long as you're at school. And finally, you get home, you get out of the river or wherever you were, the lake, and now I'm okay. But you do that to a kid every single day of his life, except for, weekends and summer vacations, Christmas holidays, year after year after year after year. It has some impact on the child's thinking. it could even lead, and I'm not an expert in this, I'm kind of speculating here, but I'm thinking it could even lead to something akin to, what do they call that, post-traumatic syndrome or something like that. The term escapes my mind. But yeah, we're more likely to feel emotional empathy sometimes than even other people. Number 7. You probably didn't think of this one, but did you know that some people with autism are hilarious? I mean, they just have a sense of humor. I think it's because they have a different outlook on life and, well, a different outlook on everything. And isn't that what's funny? You listen to, I don't know who your favorite comedian is. I think Bill Burr is hilarious. I don't think he's autistic, but I think he's funny. I wish he didn't use so much profanity, but the guy just, I can't listen to him without laughing. I think a lot of autistic people do what he does, and that is take a different approach to life. And it's kind of funny. Now, my problem is, I like to try to be funny, but I'm not. There's nothing worse than somebody who's trying to be funny because, unless it just comes natural, you got a gift for it. It just comes across as kind of corny. Number 8, and this too is a big one you need to pay attention to, is people with autism tend to be nonviolent. We have, they call it a flat effect. Now, again, not all of us, but we have a flat effect by and large. In other words, we don't express emotion. We don't express happiness, sorrow, all those things, like neurotypical people do in the hive mind. But there are a few cases where a person is violent who is coincidentally autistic, and when that happens, the media picks up on autism because the person is autism, when the person is autistic, and they include that in the story, and the impression that is made on the general public is all these violent people are autistic, therefore all autistic people must be prone to violence. Totally backwards. There are some autistic people who snap, but that's a tiny minority. Number 9 is we're all unique. Got to emphasize that. There is no pattern that fits all people who have autism. So where does this come from? Well, what happens is in our minds, sometimes people will form a mental template of what autism is. And they take that template around and they see if it fits. And if it fits, they say that person is autistic. They're doing it exactly backwards. There is no autistic template. There are characteristics, and if you have enough of those characteristics, a good qualified therapist, qualified is a good term, therapist doesn't use a template. What they do is they, when I went in and had sessions with a therapist, I think there were maybe 4 or 5 sessions, and just asked questions, and she was looking and probing for signs of autism, and I didn't know it at the time. But she was very subtly checking other things, what do you call it? Temperature of emotional stressors, maybe, looking to see how I would respond, whether or not I would have a flat effect. If something came across as anger or humorous or sad, there was no difference. So, that was one indicator of many. But the point is, we're all unique. We're all different. Try to find 2 people with autism who are exactly the same. Good luck with that. I don't think even identical twins who are autistic are exactly the same. All right, number 10. This is the big one that I decided to save to last. And I think it's important to know that number 10, you don't outgrow it. It doesn't go away. It doesn't stop. If you live to be as old as I am, how old am I? I'll be 71 in a couple weeks. If you live to be in your 70s or beyond, if you are autistic, you're still going to be autistic. If you're a male, you're still going to be a male. If you're a female, you're still going to be a female. It doesn't change. There's no amount of therapy that can make you not be autistic. There's no surgical procedure that can make you not be autistic. You are autistic because of neurological conditions of your brain that are prenatal. This has been well researched, well studied. What is that guy's name? Baron Cohen. Can't think of his first name, but he's done a tremendous amount of study. He's actually knighted in the United Kingdom. Simon is his first name. Well worth reading what he has to say about these things, but it's neurological. And because it's neurological, it can't change. There are things about me that are neurological that have nothing to do with autism, but those things are not going to change. My DNA, it is what it is, not going to change. My autism, it is what it is, it's not going to change. Now, obviously, I can learn little tricks in how to better function and communicate with people who live in the neurotypical hive mind and get along a little better. Nothing wrong with that, but I'm still not going to be neurotypical. Never will be. And as I get older, when I was a kid, it bothered me immensely. When you get into high school, that teen years where peer pressure is at its peak, then it became a serious problem for me and for a lot of people who are autistic. But as I mature and get older, I kind of like it. If I could go back and change, I wouldn't do it. I may do things differently, but I wouldn't not be autistic because I like being like this. And I hope as you get older, like tomorrow, you'll become a little bit more accepting and appreciative of your autism if you're autistic. And again, you can make improvements, but you're not going to change it. Improvements being, that's probably not even the best word to use because, you are what you are. You can't really improve it, but you can be more effective, I guess I should say, socially or whatever, so that you can enhance your life experiences. But again, it's neurological. You don't want to change your brain because it's nature made it the way that it is, and there's nothing whatsoever wrong with you being you. I mean, just flat out nothing. And when people make you feel bad about you being you, there's a term for that. It's called gaslighting. Don't let people gaslight you. Embrace yourself. Be grateful for who you are. Admit that you have flaws because, you're human. Everybody has flaws. Say, I'm not normal. I have flaws. Well, everybody has flaws. Therefore, you're normal. Did you get something out of this video? If you did, we invite you to join our families by just subscribing to our YouTube channel. Give this video a thumbs up if you think it deserves it. Leave a comment if you want to add something or join a conversation or start a conversation. Sharing this on social media, it really helps. So Facebook, formerly Twitter, X, that's a good place to share it. And we'll see you all next time.